Hey everyone, it's Todd the Cybertruck Truck Guy, and today I want to talk about the Cybertruck as an idea. In late April of 2020, the lead designer for the European car company Renault was on the phone with some Australian auto journalists. The designer, Francois Leboyan, who's renowned for his unique and controversial designs like the Renault Twizy, he acknowledged that while Renault only makes one pickup truck, he would, however, really like to design one. And then he kind of went off on a side trail and started talking about the Cybertruck. So here's what he said in his own words. It's very funny because as a design exercise, the Cybertruck is touching the opposites, he said. On one hand, it's the perfect design exercise to be iconic. Iconic, of course, for designers is the best because you become immediately recognizable to the world while you're detaching yourself from the world. And there is no better way to make you known and recognized than making a very simple, simplistic design, and that is, of course, immediately iconic. He went on to say, there's something that bothers me, I would say. There is something which is very brutal in this design, and that kind of makes me wonder if I could do something like this. If I would accept to go this very strong and simple, iconic design without stopping myself from doing it. He later went on to say, but in terms of pure styling exercise, I love it. What I like about the quotes from this designer is that you can see the tension that he's having between admiring the courage and the simplistic brutality of the design, and yet at the same time wondering if he himself would actually have the ability to do a design so simple, so direct, so counter to what everyone else does. The design of the Cybertruck itself makes him ask, could I do it? Could I have the boldness and the self-confidence to go against conventional wisdom and design something so simple? Okay, so I'm going to get a little philosophical on you right now. And I'm even going to approach some subjects that might seem a little weird for a channel dedicated to vehicles, but I hope you'll bear with me. So first, I need to admit that I'm a romantic. And no, I don't mean I like romance. What I mean is I'm a romantic in the classic sense of the word. I mean that I'm drawn to the classical ideas of valor and courage and adventure that we sort of ascribe to the archetypal hero. I mean that I cry at the end of watching Saving Private Ryan and Old Yeller every time. I mean that I want to go on great and small adventures. I want my life to mean something. I want to be part of something bigger than just getting through the day. And all these things are part of the reason why I love the Cybertruck. I don't just love the truck itself, but I love the things that brought the truck to life and what the truck itself represents. To me, as ambitious and amazing as all the other projects are that Elon Musk and Tesla have done, Cybertruck stands alone as a pure visual symbol of Tesla and Elon Musk's unwillingness to accept the status quo of the car industry. So I want to repeat one of the quotes that I mentioned earlier. There is something which is very brutal in this design, and that kind of makes me wonder if I could do something like this, if I would accept to go in this very strong and simple, iconic design without stopping myself from doing it. What he's saying here is that although the actual design of the Cybertruck is kind of simple, but from a risk-taking, brass balls, I'm all in standpoint, the Cybertruck design is terrifying. It's so bold, it's so aggressive, it's such a departure from convention that the people who actually designed the Cybertruck were showing a kind of reputational courage that is very rare. Did you watch the movie Tucker? If not, I suggest you do. The movie is about Preston Tucker and his revolutionary, way before its time, car, the Tucker 48, and how the industry powers of the time conspired to actually destroy him. To me, that film does a great job of conveying the kind of David versus Goliath struggles that have been a part of the auto industry for the last 100 years. and it's really nothing but a graveyard full of Davids. I've done a video presenting the Cybertruck as the iPhone of the 2020s, but today I want to talk about the Cybertruck as a character in the story of David and Goliath. Now, I'm not a religious man, but I did grow up in a religious household, and the story of David and Goliath kind of got imprinted on me, and I know it really well. And I think the reason why the analogy of David and Goliath extends so far out just past a religious context is because the symbology in the story resonates, and it sounds so familiar with so many of the stories that we hear when a David actually does slay a Goliath. Maybe you know the story and maybe you don't, but the storyteller in me feels like I at least need to provide the outline of it here in order to make my point. Imagine you have two vast armies facing each other across a desert valley. Wars at this time were brutal, face-to-face affairs, and they were often fought as much by semi-skilled laborers as by professional soldiers. While each army was willing to fight, it's safe to say that many of the soldiers would have preferred not to. Enter the solution, a battle of champions. Each army would pick a champion and send him forth, and the champions would fight on behalf of the armies. Whichever champion won, that army won, and the losers would have to negotiate their surrender accordingly. So on the one side of this valley are the Philistines, and on the other side of this valley are the Israelites. It so happened that the Philistines had a giant of a man that they wanted to send out as their champion. The Bible does such a good job of describing him. I'm just going to quote from the Bible here for a couple seconds. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 4. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span, about 9 feet tall. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels, or about 125 pounds. On his legs he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and the iron point weighed 600 shekels, or about 15 pounds. His shield-bearer went ahead of him. Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Then the Philistines said, "This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. Okay, so day after day, for 40 days, this giant dude goes out into the valley and he taunts the Israelites and King Saul, their king. And King Saul is desperate. He's looking all over to try and find a champion he can send out to face Goliath. So anyway, King Saul, he gets so desperate that he tells everyone, look, if someone wants to be the champion and go out and face him, if he wins, I'll give him all this money, and I'll even give him my daughter's hand in marriage. So after all this time, one day, this young man, probably in his late teens or early 20s, named David, he's just a shepherd. He's bringing food to his brothers who are actually in the army. And he hears and sees this giant out there taunting the Israelites. And then he hears about the reward. And as kind of a young man who feels invincible and kind of feels he has nothing to lose, he says, "What the hell? I'll do it." Now, at first, nobody took him seriously, but he persisted, and he finally got a chance to get in front of King Saul himself in order to make his case. And he said, "Hey, I'm a shepherd. I've been out on my own for years. I've had bears attack the sheep. I've killed them. I've had lions attack the sheep. I've killed them. If I can kill a bear and a lion, I can take on this giant." So, with no better options, King Saul finally agreed to let David give it a shot. He felt kind of bad because you're looking at this scrawny kid on one hand, and then you're looking at this giant in the valley on the other. So he said, "I'll tell you what, let me outfit you at least in some armor to give you fighting chance. So David tried it on and he was like, man, this totally cramps my style. I either need to fight Goliath my way or I can't do it at all. So Saul relents and David goes out unarmored to face this giant. Well, it turns out David, he wasn't planning on fighting the old way with the sword and the shield and the javelin. David had killed those bears and those lions, not with his bare hands, but with an ancient distance weapon called the sling. See, the sling was really just a long piece of rope with a leather pouch in the middle of it, and you would hold two ends of the rope together, and it would kind of make a loop at the other end, put the rock in that, then you'd start spinning it really, really fast. Then you'd let go with one side of the rope, and that would cause the rock to come sailing out at ballistic speeds. And it turns out, when you're a shepherd in the desert with nothing to do all day, you just practice getting really, really good with the sling. So David, he knew how he was going to take on Goliath, and he wasn't going to do it playing Goliath's game. Imagine you're Goliath, you're this monster of a man, and this kid comes walking out. He feels contempt. So again, I can't really tell the story any better than the Bible does, so I'm going to quote again here from the Bible. When Goliath saw this puny, unarmored kid walking towards him, he was overwhelmed with contempt, and he shouted out, quote, from verse 43. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?" And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." And as the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly towards the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and Goliath fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. All right, heck of a story. So you see, to me, Cybertruck isn't just a truck. It is an idea. It's a symbol. It's a demonstration of what can happen when an underestimated David doesn't take a look at the powerful status quo and see an invincible foe, but instead sees a slow-moving, vulnerable target. When that David doesn't look at what's conventional as the ultimate of wisdom, but rather as a relic of a bygone era. When he doesn't define his choices by the choices that have come before him, but rather based on the choices that will actually get the job done, regardless of what the experts think. And if you haven't figured out the Cybertruck's role in the story, it's the stone. Iconic, brutal, perfect.